Welcome back to Ratings Game Music. My name is Will, and today we're going to be making the jump to light speed and venturing to a galaxy far, far away. That's right, folks, with the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu, today we're talking the one, the only, Star Wars. But before we do, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you like this channel, me, or whatever the hell we're doing here, you gotta let people know so that we can keep making stuff and keep the lights on around here, okay? Good talk. Now that the boring stuff is out of the way, let's talk Star Wars. Star Wars, an eternally uncontroversial, thoroughly peaceful franchise to have a conversation about online. In the interest of furthering the benign and respectful tone with which the entirety of the internet has long since agreed to discuss this franchise, let's get to work ranking every Star Wars movie. Here we go. At number 12, we have The Rise of Skywalker, an unprecedented disaster. J.J. Abrams' second at-bat in the Star Wars galaxy is not only his own personal worst film, it is the worst Star Wars film ever made by a very wide margin. In the past, you might not have liked a Star Wars film, but at least there were more to come. They weren't the literal conclusion to the entire saga. This aimed to close things out in a triumphant, satisfying way, and instead wound up almost ruining everything forever. The writing is laughable, the editing is in shambles, the direction is incoherent, the performances feel grossly underbaked in every way, as if these poor performers are being forced to speak lines of dialogue they had never even read before the camera started rolling, because they hadn't. So much of this film was rewritten, reshot, and redubbed that it's almost impossible to even view it as a film and not just see the notorious production just garishly tearing through the fabric of the movie itself. An awful film made under awful circumstances that did awful things to this franchise that it is still recovering from. At number 11, we have The Mandalorian and Grogu. If you want to hear more about it, check out our review on the channel. It's not very good. It's boring and weird and not in a good way. Just really dull stuff. I wish that this wasn't the franchise's return to the big screen. It deserves a triumphant one, and this was not it, folks. Number 10, Rogue One. To be clear, the chasm of quality between Rise of Skywalker and like every other installment on this list is large enough to fit galaxies in. Rogue One isn't a great Star Wars movie in my eyes, but it isn't anywhere near as awful as Rise of Skywalker, and it's not even anywhere near as bad as The Mandalorian and Grogu. There's plenty to like about the ambition on display in this first anthology installment, but little that I find actually affecting an execution. The idea of a ragtag group of nobodies all coming together to take down the Empire is a good one, but it has unfortunately been dwarfed by its TV prequel Andor, where Lucasfilm let Tony Gilroy, who came in to do rewrites and reshoots on this movie late in the day, go all the way out and make a bona fide meal out of that morsel of an idea. If you haven't seen Andor, you should. It's a masterpiece. Go now. Well, I mean, finish this video and then go, alright? What remains of Rogue One is just kind of a light Star Wars adventure that unfortunately sucks a lot of the mystique out of the franchise for me. The opening of the first film in 1977 was such a great in media res start that thrusts audiences into this world of endless possibilities, and Rogue One goes out of its way to regulate and strictly define every last iota of that inherent potential in ways that are just kind of dull and unexciting. The Darth Vader hallway scene is fun, but it's also the exact moment where egregious fan service became the status quo in Star Wars, which contributed directly to the sins that would form the abomination that is The Rise of Skywalker. Number 9, The Force Awakens. Given that his job was to make a 4-quadrant billion-dollar blockbuster that played to both ardent fans and newcomers alike, I think J.J. Abrams did a pretty swell job with The Force Awakens. Is it my favorite Star Wars movie? Clearly not. It's number 9 on the list. Are you even paying attention? But I think the script, as writ by Abrams and franchise veteran and all-around legend Lawrence Kasdan, is a strong reintroduction to the galaxy that plants some really interesting seeds in the form of new narrative and thematic material, and also does a fantastic job of establishing and endearing this new batch of characters to audiences. Is this film a bit too referential to the original Star Wars? Yes, and I also find the more lighthearted, Marvel-esque, for lack of a better term, tone of a lot of Rey and Finn's banter to be kind of jarring and unpleasant. The whole thing was reshot late in the process, according to Abrams' own commentary track on the film, and it really shows. Finn has an emotional arc here that harkens back to classic films like Casablanca or Mrs. Miniver, but heaven forbid Abrams include any scene that actually lends that kind of gravitas to it, as he instead fills the whole thing with pointless fluffery and winds up making it all kind of feel dissonant. But look, overall, Force Awakens is a strong film that I think was made even stronger by its follow-up, which we'll talk about in a bit. At number 8, we have The Phantom Menace. George Lucas is an insane man. Over 2 decades after launching what became one of the most ubiquitous and popular film trilogies in history in the form of his original Star Wars trilogy, he decided to come back and make the prequel trilogy that he had long since promised. While this news initially delighted fans, what released in 1999 as Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, left many of those same people scratching their heads as they left the theater. Lucas steadfastly refused to cater to fans' desires, instead crafting a film that took influence from myths, religious texts, and classic cinema in the same ways that the original trilogy took influence from pulp serials. The resulting first installment is a film with a whole new aesthetic, an entirely different tone, and a bold new filmmaking approach. People have come around on this in the years since, but I've always been a fan of this absolutely batshit insane movie that sees Lucas going full-blown sicko mode in a way that anyone who had seen his debut feature, THX 1138, should have known he had in him. Number 7, Solo, a Star Wars story. I like Solo. It faced a ton of creative trouble during production, lost its initial directors in the form of Lord and Miller, you know, those guys who just made like the highest grossing film of the year so far that also happens to be a space set adventure movie starring a very charismatic lead, interacting with an alien creature who he initially can't understand but learns to. Just something for everyone to ponder. Anyway, the film had its troubles and then flopped at the box office, but I think it's a hootin' and hollering good time of a space western. Lawrence Kasdan returned to co-write this screenplay with his son Jonathan, and it was eventually helmed to completion by Ron Howard. I think the new cast is great, especially Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo and Donald Glover as Lando. It's got some standout action set pieces like the train bit, and it's just a fun time. As a die-hard fan of Kasdan's Silverado, I guess I just kind of have to admit that I'm a sucker for Kasdan indulging in western cliches. What can I say? Number 6, Attack of the Clones. What I love about Attack of the Clones is that despite the vehement initial reaction to The Phantom Menace, George Lucas didn't back down. The man made a film that is arguably even more idiosyncratic and insane, and I love him for it. This is a movie that features Sid Mead, futuristic cityscapes, American graffiti, high-speed chases, Obi-Wan Kenobi getting stuck in the middle of a noir film set on a planet where it's never not raining, Anakin and Padme in their own little Shakespeare arc, and a finale that is John Carter on Mars meets Apocalypse Now. A deranged movie that you are more than allowed to not like, but I'll kind of think a little bit less of you if you just refuse to engage with the lunacy Lucas is putting out here. We don't get movies this big and this idiosyncratic anymore. We should have cherished this while we had it. Number 5, Return of the Jedi. The capper to the original trilogy is the film that perhaps benefits the most these days from watching the saga in continuity order. When the film came out in 1983, it was viewed as technically impressive, more than apt conclusion of the trilogy, but an overall weaker film than the previous 2 entries. However, if you're watching the franchise today, this is where the prequel and original trilogies merge into a unified force, resulting in something kind of transcendent. The ways in which Lucas deliberately reverse-engineered so much of the prequels to lead here is kind of nuts, a plan decades in the making that now pays off in spades. Moments like Yoda's death, the Emperor's defeat, and Anakin's return to the light side played fine on their own, but with the prequels in mind, take on this gargantuan level of impact and significance. Really great movie, love the Ewoks, C-3PO having to pretend to be a god is his very best A-tier material, John Williams' Luke and Leia theme here is one of my favorites of the entire franchise, and everything having to do with the Luke-Vader relationship here is just grade A stuff. Number 4, A New Hope. The original movie is a cinematic fable incarnate. Now, nearly 50 years later, it's easy to look back at the film through layers of distortion and nostalgic amber, but in reality, George Lucas' Star Wars from 1977 is a weird movie, and it deserves to be hailed as such. In a time where everyone else in Hollywood was making grounded, gritty character dramas, Lucas swung for the fences and accidentally struck gold with a pulpy, serialized homage to the science fiction adventure stories he loved as a kid. It's the hero's journey and a western and a samurai film and a war movie all wrapped up into one, and it's insatiably great. It's one of those films that I'm always fearful has just become too exposed, that so many people just think of it and go, oh yeah, Star Wars, I've seen that. But Star Wars is a glorious oddity that deserves to be engaged with for what it is, not for how you or the culture remember it to be. A weird movie. Number 3, Revenge of the Sith. George Lucas closed out his prequel trilogy with the most action-packed, monumentally ambitious, and pathos-laden installment of all. This thing is a true blue, classical tragedy with lightsabers, and it f***s every bit as hard as that makes it sound like it does. Lucas takes all of the societal, political, and religious beliefs that have played into the whole of the prequel trilogy and brings them to a searing culmination here. The opening sequence is bananas from the start. The entire cast is the best they've ever been here. General Grievous is a grade A freak. The Order 66 sequence is Lucas quoting his own BFF Francis Ford Coppola as The Godfather and pulling it the f*** off, and everything on Mustafar is all-timer. As of now, Revenge of the Sith is the last movie George Lucas has ever directed, and while I would give my left arm to see some of those experimental works he's allegedly been personally making in private for years now, this is about as fitting of a conclusion as one could possibly hope for from such an idiosyncratic and distinct filmmaking. Number 2, The Last Jedi. If The Force Awakens effectively relaunched Star Wars to mass audiences and got everybody on board with the new characters, then The Last Jedi was writer-director Rian Johnson challenging all of those preconceived notions and delivering an astoundingly affecting film in the process. So much of what was set up in The Force Awakens gets explored with such greater nuance, articulation, and depth in this film, whereas Force Awakens could occasionally feel as if it was hampered by the trademark J.J. Abrams keep things moving so fast no one has time to ask any real questions pace. Last Jedi allows for resonance and breadth in a way that feels much more in step with Lucas's films and the classics that they took inspiration from. It's a film that digs into the themes and characters at work in this trilogy. Force Awakens was happy to recycle beats from the original trilogy, but Last Jedi sees Johnson and co. turning that into his central thesis. Why do stories repeat? What is behind the cyclical nature of storytelling and by extension the world at large? Can we escape it? How can someone forge their path forward amid such trappings? Last Jedi is a beautiful film that nails everything I love about Star Wars. Big themes, classical cinema reference points, fantastical mysticism mixed with palpable politics, and a testament to the value of optimism even in the face of annihilation. Phenomenal stuff, Rian Johnson, you're a king among men, my guy. And number 1, The Empire Strikes Back. I think that director Irvin Kershner's The Empire Strikes Back is a perfect film. If A New Hope is this incredible little cinematic fable, an encapsulation of childhood hopes, fears, and growth in so many different ways, then The Empire Strikes Back is the natural progression of that, with the clearly defined beliefs of youth giving way to the uncertainty of adulthood, the black and white lines differentiating good and bad getting eroded away throughout this film, as Luke Skywalker and his pals have to face a far more complicated, introspective, and existential kind of journey. This was the first time Lucas brought Lawrence Kasdan on board the franchise, and it shows. Kasdan's writing here is astounding and would go on to earn him the role of writing Raiders of the Lost Ark for Lucas and Spielberg, which is equally incredible. Frank Oz's debut as Yoda is amazing, and George Lucas was right to campaign for an Oscar for him at the time. It is an insanely baller move to open the film with a full-blown Rebel versus Empire battle sequence that dares to top the Death Star run finale of the previous film and succeeds. William December Williams, yes, that's his real name, Lando, is a legend, and the entire third act is some of the funniest, most affecting, and absolutely enthralling stuff ever put to screen. An all-timer movie and an all-timer franchise. The Empire Strikes Back is a masterpiece. And that is our official ranking of all of these Star Wars movies, folks. It's a film franchise that is stretched over the course of decades, and within that time ranged from transcendently incredible to outright garbage, so it's a nice incline in terms of quality when you lay them out like this. But I have no doubt that you have opinions of your own. The Force isn't strong with this list. Where's that dog animated Clone Wars movie from 2008? Are you excited for the love hypothesis? I can sense these disturbances in the Force, and I want to hear from you below. Tell me how wrong I am, please. Give us your rankings and tell us if The Mandalorian and Grogu was the triumphant return to theaters that you were hoping for from the franchise, or if you think it was a little too late. Whatever you do, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate it, and may the Force be with you. Have a great one, folks.